So can you explain, when we're representing a buyer and the buyer is a vet, how you present your offer to the listing agent and the seller when the veteran is doing 0% down, and a lot of times the seller, it feels that if he doesn't have money in escrow, it's not a worthy client.
So, and that really kind of, and that's a great question, and that's kind of, you know, what us as mortgage loan officers, or at least the good ones, are trying to do to get rid of that stereotype, right? We're trying to, if you have a pre-approval, it doesn't matter if you're putting 0% down, if you're putting 80% down. A pre-approval is stating that this buyer can purchase this home, and they are fully vetted to purchase this home. Now, what that comes back to, again, is starting at the basics with education as realtors, right? And knowing that, as a educated realtor, you know with confidence that if I have a pre-approval letter, that means it's pre-approved. Now, I can only speak for myself as a mortgage loan officer with doing a fully vetted pre-approval, and with Ross Mortgage doing fully vetted pre-approvals. That's where you get back to if calling the mortgage loan officer and saying, is this a true pre-approval? Did you collect all of his documents? Okay, yes. Now, okay, it does have a 0% down, but in some cases, what you'll want to do is, because you do see that 0% down, you have a buyer and you say, oh, they don't have anything because it's a VA loan. What happens if they need to come up with extra funds for any reason? Okay, how do you get your buyer that home? How do you get them into that home with a 0% down? Well, one way is really just communication with the other realtor. And if they're willing to listen and understand, and they should have enough sense and knowledge and education to know that it's a VA loan, okay? That this is what happens as a traditional loan. There's some cases where I'll, write a letter to the other agent, let them know, hey, listen, this is a VA loan. They're fully vetted, they're fully, ready to purchase the home. But, this is the best option for them as far as a mortgage. So that's one way around it. Any questions on the VA loan process? Anything that, if that's the only thing, again, the only thing that I would really focus on with the VA is just making sure that they're being pre-approved by the right company and protecting them. Okay? Because it's really, it's up to us as professionals in this business to know what's out there, and if there's any predatory lending or predatory, companies that are going after our buyers. We need to fully take care of them.
And treat them like clients.
Yes, yeah, and not just the number of their clients. So moving on, USDA loans. Again, this is for more rural areas, not so much urban, but this is also the other option that's not specified to a certain clientele per se, for a 0% down loan. Okay, so this is your other option. USDA is, like I said, there's only certain areas that will qualify for this. So it's not the clientele, it's the actual area, it's the actual town. In some cases, it's the actual parcel, it's the actual property. It's rare that happens, but usually this is segregated by towns. Okay, so if you're looking more out to, the Harvard areas, areas out that way, that are, more farming communities, I guess, if you really want to kind of think of it, your buyer could qualify for those types of loans. So if you ever, hear that, buyers want to be out and have a lot of land and, own a farm, or just those keywords that pop up, it's something to just think about, because even if they're, if they're strapped with cash, or you can give them a little bit more purchasing power, it might come up. Okay, so just when you're out in those rural areas, just be cautious of that. jumbo loans. If you have a buyer who is looking for a home, it's really about $500,000 or more. Jumbo loans should spark in your mind. Okay, so the limit for right now is right around $450,000 and below, and that's a traditional loan, and that could, we could have any combination of these products that we talked about. When you hear the word, when you get into these higher numbers, loans on the mortgage end become increasingly more difficult because now we're lending a lot more money, and there are certain additional items that need to be reviewed and certain additional criteria that needs to be met by your buyer. Okay, so if you hear jumbo loan, just make sure that, again, you have that conversation with your buyer. Did you go through all of your options? This is a great product to get rid of that private mortgage insurance when you're up above that limit, especially. There's opens a lot of options. So, just if you hear the word jumbo, perk up a little bit about that, because there's going to be extra criteria, okay, especially on the mortgage end. On your end, it's going to be great. It's a high price, home, and a borrower has worked very hard to get into that. So just, if it does pop up, just pay a little extra attention to that. You know that it's most likely going to take a little bit longer in the process, from start to finish. I wouldn't say always, just maybe sometimes, depending on what criteria is needed and what loan amount that is. Because once you get to the 500 to $1 million, great. Above $1 million, above $2 million, that's where it gets a little bit more difficult. Okay. We've already gone over, I did go over, if we're just kind of reading down here, the FHA versus conventional mortgage. Like I said, conventional mortgage is just a regular mortgage. Nothing special about them. They're kind of run-of-the-mill mortgage. Nothing great. They're perfect, but there's no ins and outs of them. It's pretty traditional. The benefits of using the FHA loan, we've gone through that. Like I said, credit score is the higher purchasing power. Again, if you just kind of follow through these pages, this is really going to just relay everything that we've been talking about, just in kind of a more broader text, and go over the conventional mortgage, the government mortgages, and VA loans. There's a lot of content in here in regards to the VA loans, which is nice because, like I said, I know that, we talked about the different types of lenders out there that are really trying to get these veterans. So the fact that this content is in here is really just signifying of that you really do need to be cautious if you do have a veteran borrower. We're going to be talking about credit scores. Casey's going to be talking about, just credit and how integral credit is in this mortgage pre-approval process. The fact that credit even by 2 points could change your payment a lot. So Casey's going to touch upon that and really kind of go more into scope about it. The one thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm glad this is in here, is the paperwork that the buyers need to provide to the mortgage lender. Okay? A mortgage loan officer would be doing your buyer a disservice by not obtaining all of the documentation and not being persistent about obtaining the necessary documentation up front. Okay? If we do not obtain the necessary documentation up front, although it may be tedious at the front part of this, if something is missed or we just take a verbal, if we say, oh, how much do you make per year? Oh, I make $60,000. Well, okay, I'll get your pay stub later. Or because I need my pre-approval right now. I need it right now, I need it right now. You're sitting with your buyer, you say, Sarah, I need this right this second. Well, if I go off of that word and I don't collect the right documentation, that's fine. Hey, here's your pre-approval. I did it for you, whatever. Great, you're happy. Everybody's happy. Make an offer on the house. Well, then 2 weeks later when I get the pay stub and it's not that, doesn't work. So in the beginning, be patient with this, but be aggressive with your buyers, okay? Be patient with the loan officer as long as they're doing their job and as long as they're requesting this documentation from the actual buyer. That is going to save you so much time down the road, okay?
Can you talk a little bit about the differences between how long you've had a job, whether you're a contract person or W-2 or all of those things, and how that plays into it?
So if you're a W-2 employee, we look at a 2-year track record, okay? That's what we're looking at, is a 2-year track record. If you have a W-2 job for the last 2 years, it's very easy. Okay, that's a very easy way to calculate your income. Even if your income has fluctuated, if you've had a couple jobs within the last couple of years, it's definitely, there's not much to it when we're looking at calculating your income. Okay, now if you have bonus, if you have commission, and you have overtime in that W-2 job, that adds an extra layer. Okay, and it does. I mean, and if you need that extra income, to really get you to that highest income level that you're gaining, it might take, some extra digging. Most of the times, if we're requesting from your buyer at least 2 pay stubs, I do like to have 4 or 5 pay stubs, because then you have a track record. If they do get monthly bonus, they do get monthly commissions, we have a record of that. In most cases, we're going to be able to give you a really great idea of what the income the buyer can use based off of those full pay stubs, based off of the W-2s, and based off of the tax returns, okay? Now, the flip side to this is if you have a buyer who is self-employed. This is where a lot of buyers and borrowers, they struggle with this, okay? Because if you're doing, what we do is we're basing your income off of your bottom line of your federal tax returns, okay? Now, I don't know how many self-employed people really are down to the penny with how much they make and then how much they deduct, okay? A lot of times, I'm going to be stereotypical, but there's not many people out there that are really taking track penny by penny by penny. So that bottom line doesn't always reflect what's coming in your pocket. But even though it is coming in your pocket and you think that you have the money, on the mortgage end, what we have to go by is what your bottom line income was. Okay, so if you made $500,000 last year, great. But if you just, on your tax returns, if you just put down that you received $30,000, that's the only income we can use. Okay? So it's very important when you have a self-employed borrower, that you're, even though they make a lot of money, and they probably do, just need to know that it have to go off that bottom line. A lot of times what ends up is I end up deferring, well, if it's, say it's this time of year, and I have somebody who comes to me and says, Sarah, I want to buy a house, and I'm self-employed, I make great money, I've been self-employed for 2 years, and I look at their tax returns, and that bottom line is really low compared to what they made. Well, they could just be starting off. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But what I will say to them is, why don't we bank on next spring? Okay, after you do your tax returns, figure that out with your accountant, figure that out with your CPA, and then what you need to be making on paper, and what you should be making, do that correctly. Make sure that you're presenting those numbers correctly, because on our end, on mortgages deal with the government, the federal government, and your tax returns deal with the federal government, and those numbers can't be different on our end. So, good question, Susan, just to ask about the different types of incomes.
What about the not negatives, but things like child support?
Child support, child support's positive for who's receiving it. negative for,
But
you know.
meaning, so that's a liability that you are incurring, that something else that's being taken away from you that the bank has to be aware of.
Yeah, so if you're paying child support, if you're paying alimony, if those are things that are, if you're paying into your IRS taxes that you've owed for, you know, years, those are deductions that we have to take, okay? We remove those from what we would qualify you for your income.
If I could make a comment again.
Yeah.
I was walking in downtown Boston with a banker one day years ago, and he got a call and he took it, and the client said to him, "Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't find out about it."
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. Be honest and upfront with your mortgage person, because it's only going to be found out anyway.
Yeah,
so.
We're semi-investigators because we have to be. And the thing is, you know, there's no way that you're getting around anything with, especially, you know, any qualified mortgage loan officer. You don't know the system. Your buyers don't know the system, so trying to hide anything is not going to do them any good whatsoever. That's why at this starting game, when they're providing their documentation and we're really fully taking a full application from them, be 100% honest. And that's what I always tell my buyers. And I say to them, listen, it's me, and I need you to tell me absolutely everything. Please do not hide anything, because we will find out. And it's not that we're investigating, it's just, you know, mortgages, you know, they've been going on a long time, and there's a lot of people who have tried to commit fraud, so there's a lot of fraud protection in that for your buyers. I mean, it's for a good thing, but yeah, it's a great point, Susan, because there are so many people that, I didn't think you'd find that, or I didn't think that mattered, or, so yeah, make sure that your buyers are, do you have a question?
Yeah. Now, what if two people that aren't spouses are trying to purchase a home together?
It's completely fine. I mean, you can buy a house with anybody. What happens with that is, you know, you want to make sure that you're both protected. You're both responsible for the payment, so you want to make sure that both of you have legal rights to that home. But there's no problem with that. If there are two people that aren't married, they're not spouses, they're not related, you know, and if they own other homes, that could throw a little bit more something into it, but for the most part, no, it's pretty easy to get around.
Now, do you both have to have the same income, or is it counted as one income?
So both of your income would be counted towards the overall, you know, debts to your income.
Okay.
So we would be able to use both of your incomes to get you to that purchasing power.
So it's like one pre-approval?
Yeah. Yeah. So just to recap on paperwork, I know you want to get your buyers to make that offer immediately, but if they don't have a real pre-approval with that documentation, it's going to waste everybody's time.
Yeah, and I don't know how they do that. I always use the slang term, I don't want you to eat hot dogs and beans 5 nights a week. You want them to be comfortable in the price range they're looking in, so that they're not stretching themselves, so they're still able to go out to dinner once a month or whatever it is. And if they've just pulled a number out of the sky, that it doesn't help them, and it certainly doesn't help you to take them out to look at $400,000 houses and find out they're only worthy to buy a $250,000 house. So that, I mean, I try to explain that in a positive way too, to say it's better for you to know what price range you're comfortable in.
Yes. And it's really, and I'll commenting on that, right? So I find a lot of times that buyers say, okay, I love this house in the $400,000 range. Okay, and we do the payments out in the beginning. And then, you know, they're looking, and then they find the house that they love, and it's right around that same amount. And then they realize what the mortgage payment is. Even though they've seen it before, now this is real, okay? So you have to make sure that they're comfortable. And that really falls upon us as mortgage professionals to be communicative with your buyers to be responsible with your buyers to make sure that they're comfortable.
Can you talk about the difference between the single family and the condo?
Mhm.
That the condo fee adds another participle to all that they have to spend, and the 12 months of homeowners or whatever.
Yeah. So with single family homes compared to multifamily homes compared to condos. Okay, those are three different animals. If you have a buyer who's pre-approved for a single family home and then they start looking at multi-family homes or condos, that pre-approval's not good for you. It's not good for your buyer because their qualifications will change. Okay, some positive, some negative. But the main difference I'm glad you brought up condos because condos really are a beast of their own. Okay, single family homes, you're great. You have your mortgage payment, you have your real estate taxes, your homeowner's insurance, and maybe your private mortgage insurance lumped into one payment that you make to the mortgage company, right? Condos, okay. As an individual, as a buyer, you get pre-approved for a mortgage, okay? Condos need a separate approval. So if you have a buyer that is looking at a condo, you have to make sure that condo is in good standing. Okay? And this is something that I don't see a lot of realtors doing out there, and I wish they would do more of, is really even when you're selling a condo, make sure that condo is able to be financed. Some condominiums are not able to be financed. Can't even get a loan.
Is that what you call good standing?
Yes. Yeah. So when you have a buyer who's looking at a condo, we got to make sure if they're getting a mortgage, we have to make sure that condominium complex is in good standing. And what that means is that their budget has adequate amount of funds in there. Their reserves have an adequate amount in there. The homeowners that are living in that condo complex are not late or defaulted on their condo fees, and that the overall condition of the condo, depending on if there's investors living there, a lot of rules change in the condo in the guidelines. Okay, so this is something we as mortgage professionals need to be really on top of our game with, because we need to make sure that if a condo does kind of pop up, we got to make sure we got to get find out that information immediately. Okay, so
and in some cases, if you're an agent, like Chelmsford has tons of condos, and sometimes agents will think they know that it's an approved complex, and for some reason the condo association has let that lapse. You're really behind the eight ball, and for them to do the reapplication takes time, right?
It does. So with every mortgage so if you hear condo, definitely pay more attention to it. If you hear condo with a specialized product like an FHA or a VA or a USDA, that's a whole nother layer, okay? So don't be scared of condos as long as you're doing the correct work up front for your buyer and protecting your buyer, to make sure that when you if your buyer does want to go see a condo, just explain to them, have you talked to your mortgage loan officer about buying a condo? How does that change your pre-approval? Because now condos are, historically in price, condos are, less expensive than a home for the purchase price. But on a month-to-month basis, it's not the case whatsoever.
So if you had a brand new client and they really didn't know what they were looking for, they're just starting out, would it be better for them to say to you, we don't know if we want to buy a single family or a condo, can you approve us however differently it is for both?
Yes.
And then they're prepared for that.
Mm-hmm. And that really, from a mortgage loan officer's perspective, the first question that we should be asking is what type of property you're looking for. Because property is moreover than income, moreover than assets, moreover than how much money you have in the bank. What type of property are you looking for? If they say, I don't know. And then we go through every option with them. If you have a condo, this much, a single family, this much. The other thing that I want to touch upon too is multifamilies. Multifamilies, you are able, if you are buying a 2-family, 3-family, 4-family, you are able to use that income that will be derived from that other unit to your overall income. It's not going to be 100% of the income, but it's definitely going to provide you more purchasing power as a buyer. So you have, your buyers that are coming up to you and saying, geez, I can't find anything, and, I'm looking, with me and, my friend, or, throw it on the table. Maybe, would you ever be interested in multi? Some say, yeah, maybe. Others, no at all, but, I think it's a good idea that, we look at the multis. Talk to your mortgage loan officer. Talk to Sarah. See what she can do for you. And we can look at those different incomes. The thing with that is that you're always not going to have that. With the pre-approval on a single-family home, it's very easy to say, okay, you're approved from $375 to $385, depending on the taxes in the town. Okay. With multifamilies, there's a 2-family, a 3-family, a 4-family. So we can't always say you're approved for, $350, because you could be approved for $300 if the rents are very low, or you could be approved for $450 if the rents are really high. So it depends on, a different number of things, the rentals that come into play with that. But there's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Like I said, it's, on your end, it's really just, it's not knowing all the ins and outs of this mortgage stuff, right? We don't want you to know all of that stuff. We want you to be able to focus on the customer, to focus on the buyer, to make sure that they're getting in that right home, okay? And at that point, once you go through the process, and I'll just kind of briefly, the last thing that I'm just going to touch upon is really the process of how this all kind of flows through.
Hey, John.
I'm in my own head at this point. So, if we're looking at the process, the first, like I said, what we've been focusing on is the pre-approval, okay? This is a major thing, okay? And that's where most times a buyer will come to a realtor first because they see a home online, they know you, they'll say, hey, it's Laura's, hey, Augustine, I want to buy a house. You say you're pre-approved. No, okay. You send them to me, okay? And then we get them pre-approved. And then what happens is I go through I spend some time with them, make sure that they're, all set to go. We have a conversation, we talk about it, all of us together. Now they're yours, okay? Now you're going to take care of them, making sure that they get into that, they find that right home. You're traveling, you're making offers, okay, you get an accepted offer. Great, okay? An accepted offer. You're going to make sure you have the home inspection, okay? You're going to make sure that you're getting an attorney involved right away. And you're also going to make sure that your buyer and you as realtors now get in touch with me and say, hey, Sarah, guess what? We have an accepted offer. Let's really start this process now, okay? On your end, you're going to kind of really take care of this main part, this upfront part, with the offer, the home inspection. Moving to negotiations for the home inspection with the attorney. Then you're going to have your purchase and sales. Okay. Once you guys have the purchase and sales signed, as far as your buyers, my opinion is we're going to have enough of a trust factor, and that's what Ross Mortgage does for LAER. Okay, is that we have nurtured and comforted this relationship, for years, enough to the point where you guys now are going to feel 100% comfortable with us taking over. And what this does is allows more time and energy for you to help other buyers. Okay? The best thing that you could do is not be a helicopter realtor, is not to hover over the mortgage, because we do enough worrying for everybody involved, and we make sure that everything's going to be done. Commitment dates, closing dates, we are not missing those. Okay, that does not happen at Ross Mortgage. It does not happen with us. It does happen out there, but another reason for you as realtors to utilize the relationship that we've created and that we have, because one less thing for you to worry about, right? One less thing that needs to happen. And I do see a lot of realtors out there, commitments 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away, 1 week away, and they're worrying and worrying and worrying. We'll get it done, and that just comes along with time. And your first 5, 10 purchases, it's going to be a little bit scary, but we take care of you, and that's why we have this relationship set up, is not only to help you guys grow your business, but it's protecting your reputation and making sure that your buyers are happy with your reputation. Any questions about this process, as far as from pre-approval to making the offer to home inspection?
Going back to the communication, you have ways that you communicate from your office to the agent, saying here's a midweek review or whatever that is. So that's a punch up, so that you know not to helicopter, because you know that they're on top of things too.
Yeah. So we're constantly doing checks with you guys. We're constantly doing checks with your buyers throughout the mortgage process. You have your basic steps where you're checking in and making sure that you're talking to your buyer, sometimes 2-3 times a week if need be. But above and beyond that, we do have checks and balances in place to make sure that everything is running smoothly.
And can you talk about the LAER desk?
The LAER desk is basically your 24/7 option to ask any question to any one of our mortgage loan officers. One of the biggest things that I love to do personally is answer mortgage questions. So if it's Saturday afternoon, if it's Sunday morning, if it's Friday night at 12, and you have a question, you can ask that question. Even if it's something completely unrelated, somebody who hasn't had a pre-approval done with us yet, or any question whatsoever, we're basically here to help educate you. That's the biggest focus, is if you have a question, we don't want you thinking about it. We don't want you thinking about mortgage questions. We don't think about mortgages at all, except for the fact that we're taking care of your people. Even if you have a question about, I'm writing up this offer, how much are they putting down? How much can we maybe switch and put a little bit less down? Can we put a little bit more down? And what would that amount be? And what about commitment dates? And what are good closing dates? And purchase and sale dates? Those are things we want to talk to you about, okay?
Awesome.
So we want to make sure that you're putting in realistic dates that will give your buyers the advantage to win that offer. Because there's a lot of times that, you might put in dates that are, 2 months out. We don't need that much time. Not at all. So if you have an advantage and we can use it, ask the questions. We're happy to make sure that we're doing everything possible to make sure that the buyers are getting that accepted offer. I think that's pretty much...
Super. Thank you very much.
Pretty much.
Thank you, Sarah.
My pleasure.